morning and welcome to TruLondon. We are here live streaming via Google Hangout. We're here this morning to talk about mobile recruitment and how that's affected the candidate experience and also how it affects client strategies in terms of recruiting talent. Andy Hyatt is our expert. I'd ask the rest of our team to introduce themselves, starting with Lance.
Yeah, I'm Lance Richards. I'm with Kelly Services in our innovation function.
And I'm Ari Ball, and with Sodexo, head of talent acquisition for the U.S.
I'm Juan Urdiales, co-founder and co-CEO of Javan Talent.
I'm Dave Martin. I'm a co-founder of 3sparks.com, and you can also read my blog, mobiledave.me.
Mobile Dave, we'll remember that. Over to Andy.
Brilliant. Well, yesterday we had some interesting conversations around mobile and the numbers of companies that still do not have a mobile site. And I think it's fantastic. Sodexo, you were talking about why you've created your mobile site and your mobile apps and the impact it had. So I'm going to start with you as the client, which is really, why did you choose to develop the mobile app and mobile enable your site? And what impact has it had?
Yeah, well, originally we optimized our site for mobile. That was three and a half years ago. Two reasons. First, we saw the trend in the increases in traffic that we were getting. That was mobile from some of our vendors, Indeed and so forth. So that trend was increasing, it's doubling every year, the traffic. At the same time, our site was Flash-based. And because it was Flash-based, it wasn't viewable with the mobile app, so from a mobile device. So we knew at that time that we needed to at least optimize our site for mobile and then develop a mobile strategy. So that was the beginning about 3.5 years ago, and then we wanted to take it to a new level with the app and make it really simple for our candidates to engage with us. To join our talent community, to be able to search and apply for jobs for our internal, and to have a very special candidate experience for our internal candidates, our external candidates, and our former employees who are part of a membership we call Reconnections, our alumni program.
And have you seen a good impact? Has it worked?
Yeah, for sure. Since we started, our mobile traffic has increased from somewhere around 3-4% to 17% is where it is today. We know that 25% of our internal candidates are using the mobile app for search and applying for jobs. We've had about 170 hires through the mobile app, the majority being internal, and in all three services, so in all three portals.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Swapping the side now, you're coming up with relaunching the site. We know that mobile is a big part of that, and whilst we know this, we're going to be kind of caveated in the amount that we can say. One of the questions I've got to you is, it seems like a stupid question, but if only 17% of companies kind of deem it serious enough to create a mobile site, why did you feel it was important to invest in it?
Well, for us, it's like how our site works. It's like we have a matching algorithm, so we analyze the profiles of our users, and we match those profiles with over 300,000 jobs that we have into the platform to put in front of them in real time the most suitable jobs that we have for them at each moment. So we started in a desktop application, and then we were using a lot of emailings to communicate every time that there was a vacancy for every one of our users. And what we saw is that most of the newsletters and emailing that we were sending to our users were being opened by on a mobile device. Mm-hmm. Although our site was not optimized at that time for mobile, and it was in 2011, beginning 2012. So we created a mobile site at that time in middle 2012. So we're optimizing that, and then we started to work in a mobile app because we believe that a mobile app is going to be helping us to maintain a continuous conversation with our users. It's like we want to become like a personal headhunter for those users So we're going to be using things like push notifications to send relevant content, which if we analyze that the emails have been very successful into our system, the push notifications, which is something that is faster and which is right now something that everyone is using in their day-to-day.
Yep.
I think that the rate is like we see the mobile phone 90 times every day on average. So we just want to be one of those 90 times, or maybe one of those times every week. And we believe that it's going to help a lot to get all the people engaged, all our users, and to solve the problem that we want to solve for them. It's like to keep them informed about the job opportunities that they have in each moment of time without disturbing them so much, without sending a lot of spam and stuff.
Okay. So that's you two, gents. So we have a futurologist and mobile Dave, and you obviously know your subject. So the question I've got is one of the things that we talked about yesterday was Mary Meeker, the Mary Meeker report, whose prediction, Mary Meeker works for McKinsey Consulting, or used to, and she produced a report, very famously, The State of the Internet, and she produced one quite recently where she talked about the fact that next year, for the first time ever, access to the internet via mobile devices will outstrip access to the internet via any other device. So suddenly there's an era of credibility now to all people like us who say, we think your site should be mobile enabled, you're fools not to do that. So the question to the futurologist, and I suppose the mobile expert, is why do you think people have struggled to do what we all think they should be doing as a matter of course? Why do you think clients have struggled to do that?
I think one of the questions is we're still trying to get arms around the whole concept of candidate experience. And because candidate experience is a direct link to your brand. And I'm not sure the metrics are out there that are as convincing as they need to be to get people to move along this way. I read Mary Meeker's paper, I understand that. And we see this too with the work that we're doing in candidate experience. But I'm not sure the metrics are there to push everybody in the same direction. Sodexo gets it, but does everybody understand this, we're at the tipping point. We have to move this way. I'm not sure everybody understands that yet.
I think there's, to answer the question more directly, I've carried out some research for the last 3 years annually as part of a white paper we produce, and part of our research is how many of the FTSE 100 and the Fortune 100 have a mobile career site, a site that works at all on mobile. How many have any sort of presence in App Store for career, and how many have either an App Store and native app or an M site for their core business, whether it's retail or whatever it is they do. And what illustrated, even 3 years ago, 50% of those companies were on mobile and mobile optimized when it came to making money. They were less than 10% were optimized when it came to hiring. And I think that's really just the recruiting function doesn't get the same budget as marketing. It doesn't have the same resource and time allocation. It has to work under different constraints, and it's had to wait until the momentum is big enough to make it worthwhile for them to effectively jump on the bandwagon, which is, as we know, going to become the primary source for most people to access the internet. So it's more, I think, around, and the adoption curve is very slow. At the same time, the recruitment industry has been trying to grapple with how to maximize social media, and two technology challenges amongst all the other challenges the recruiter faces at the same time is just too many for most companies, and they're focused on the one that's more developed, social media. Now we're seeing social media become so, social media and mobile are together. There's a convergence and a synergy. Social media's growth wouldn't exist if it wasn't for mobile's growth. You can track the two together line by line and see them go up. So we're at that point now where it's big enough and the pain is being felt by recruiters, are starting to, because they're not there. And because the recruitment industry has to be more reactive than proactive, because of those budgetary constraints and all the other things that are forced on the business, we're in a place where now it's actually, I do have to do this. And I attend a lot of different events and talk about mobile around the world, and the discussion has changed over the last 12 months. 3 years ago, maybe even longer, the discussion was, why should I bother? Why should I do this thing? And the discussion from an awful lot of people has now changed dramatically to, how do I do it? rather than white. The discussion has started to change and we're seeing the tipping point. Now, we haven't released this year's report. We don't do it until in October, but a sneak preview is there's a lot more people doing it than there was last year. So we're on that trend of growth, and if we look at any sort of technology trend, we'll see it continue to grow. It's just going to be slower.
So can I ask a question? As you look at the last 3 years of your research, and you've obviously seen your upcoming research, is the adoption of mobile, is it a straight line or is it exponential?
Exponential.
It is, so it's accelerating.
Yeah, dramatically.
Okay.
So the question I've got then, and we've got a client we were having some interesting discussions yesterday, is are we seeing from a metrics point of view any differences in people who are
Hugely.
who are using mobile to apply? And I think there are two things you raised yesterday in terms of how they're using the career site and also the types of people that you're saying.
Yeah.
So from a,
Well, what we found really interesting is that people who are going to our career site using a mobile device were spending twice as much time on the site as those who went from a desktop, and they were looking at twice as many pages. It's actually 2.3 times, and they were looking at twice as many pages.
so much higher engagement figure.
Much more higher engagement, and I thought it was curious at first, but when you really think about how many of us use our mobile devices and when we browse and do, or it's when we have some time, we're on, browsing. When we're at our desktop, we're busy, we're working. So, to me, it makes sense that was what we experienced.
And what about, are you getting the same kind of people using your career site as using the mobile site, or is there a difference in terms of your audience makeup?
Yeah. The geography is, it's across all geographies across the U.S. We're not seeing that type of any difference there. We're not seeing any difference in level. We're getting people applying who are, new college graduates and, up very experienced vice presidents. At Sodexo, diversity recruitment is very, very, very important. It's a big portion of what we do. And every new initiative that we take on, anything we take, we always look at the impact on diversity. So we did with mobile, as we do with everything we did when we started getting involved in social. And you look at the Pew research, and it shows, and their research shows that minorities, which is one of the dimensions of diversity that we that we look at, have adopted mobile devices at a much higher rate than non-minorities. Compare the minorities to Caucasians. And so that's what that research showed, which I think that's great. Will be supportive of our mobile initiative. Now that we have results that we can take a look at, we have seen that we have a higher percentage of minorities not only applying, but actually the higher rate percentage of minorities hired who come through the mobile app is higher than through our general population.
Because I think that's fascinating, because when you're talking about metrics, we started to see the metrics about, yes, people accessing the site from a mobile device. And then we're also seeing is, if made applicable, they want to apply. You can get that. They want to be able to apply. In some cases you can't, so you've got that whole sort of whatever version of that ATS you may have, and so we see this kind of linked in. But I've never heard of what you're talking about, which is from an ethnic point or an ethnicity point of view, there are fundamental differences in terms of audience makeup. So I'm going to throw this out. Does that surprise you? Do you expect it?
I've seen the Pew stuff, and I'm still a little surprised to find, at least in the U.S., that the minorities were quicker adopters and more deeply penetrated into the online users, which was kind of counterintuitive given some of the demographics in the U.S. But what you've learned is very, very helpful for anybody that's looking at that. So that's the only thing that's a little surprising at that research, but it sounds like it's working great.
I think a lot of it is the cost of access to web. And the cost of access of having a smartphone with some sort of data package has dramatically changed over the last 5 years to a place where that's much more affordable. And compared to subscribing to broadband and having a PC of some description in a house, the makeup is completely different now. It's the primary device in a lot of emerging markets if you look at Chile, Brazil, India, the primary web device in Africa is mobile and smartphone. It's the first way that a certain demographic gets online because it's more affordable. So the fact that it's more affordable for an emerging market, it doesn't really surprise me that it's also more affordable for traditional markets. Why would it be more expensive? That method of getting online, why would it be more expensive in a traditional Western world? There's no difference. Of course it would be.
But do you think it's about affordability? Because we were talking yesterday, Omnicom Ethnic Media Group did a big study last year on the use of technology by the specific ethnic groups, and it was incredible. Just in the UK, but ethnic groups in the UK using different technology. Then they compared it in different countries to see where that changed. And what they actually showed was that as a white Caucasian, I'm at the bottom of every single chain in terms of adoption curves. Actually, in their research, so Chinese Asian market had the highest adoption curve, and there's some really very, very specific figures around. I mean, the distinction between the use of technology and especially the desire to use more innovative, engaging, helpful technologies between, I said, the top leading group, which are Chinese and Asian, and Caucasians, was actually quite worrying.
Do you think it's do you think it's anything to do with fashion? I have no idea. I've not seen this research, so I can't really comment on that.
I think it's
Throwing out
interesting
thoughts.
too. What's also interesting, in addition to the research on the mobile, the Pew research on social is very similar. So you take you look at that research, and you'll see, the higher percentage of those on the internet, those of Asian heritage on LinkedIn than other groups. The higher adoption of Facebook by different minority groups. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but it's very strong. Twitter.
That would drive more mobile use if these submarkets are more.
So the same thing with Twitter. It's not equal across all the demographics. So the women, higher adoption rate of women on Facebook, percentage-wise. So it's all of that, I think, plays into it. And then I think there's quicker adoption to that technology with some groups.
I think another piece to look at is the actual movement of mobile technology into these countries. If you look at the eastern seaboard of China, that was the first part of the country that was wired. Out in the hinterlands, and I've lived in China, out in the hinterlands, they skipped wireline completely, and they went from no phone service to mobile.
Right.
And so there was nothing in between. So all of a sudden, these cell towers got plunked down, and they started handing out cell phones very, very cheaply. That brings instant adoption. Then on the eastern seaboard, where you've got your Beijings, Tianjin, Shanghai, Suzhous, etc., these are the large population centers. Well, they were the first places that were wired, all the way down. You can go down through Bangkok, Singapore, KL. So what we saw is some numbers were skewed against where the technology was first deployed for mobile. And then they never had anything other than mobile. There was no blue Ethernet plug out in Chongqing. They started off with mobile. And the same thing is going on in Africa today.
Yeah, I've spoken at some HR tech events in South Africa, and the discussion from the audience is always, we've got broadband later than everybody else, we've got internet slower because of the pure size of the wire in the sea. How do we skip the process US or UK went through? How do we leapfrog and go to where you are now? We don't want to. They have that tenacity to jump over and go ahead of us. They have the tendency to learn and change, and they realise they're latecomers to the party, and they don't want to. It's a fantastic discussion because they're so the HR community at that particular event was so eager to really maximise the technology and the community, especially social media and mobile, and just jump completely. And they have no fixed. Lots of them have no fixed line at all. Everything's wireless.
So you were talking about the candidate experience, and it's an interesting, because I think people are just starting to talk about that actually. Do we think there should be a distinct experience that is created for mobile users, as distinct from, desktop? Or do we think, because this whole debate about responsive or one size fits all, and yet actually one of the things that we're starting to see is there's a difference in terms of the demographic users potentially, The experience is different. I'm walking, I might be doing this or this, but effectively it's kind of heads down. I've spent more time with it. So there are fundamental differences, or there seem to be, in how people are using the media, if it's mobile as opposed to let's call it static rather than desktop.
If it helps, I've done some research with a company called Mobile and a company called Jive in America, and both those companies focus on mobilising the apply process and working with ATSs and with corporates. And the case study data that's fed into our reports from those guys, they've shown typically one example of a 60-day piece of research. This particular company was getting 600,000 people land on their website on mobile, land on their M site. Roughly 10% started the application process, so that's 60,000, and 6,000 at the end finished the application process, and it took 30 minutes to do it on their phone. So they compared that to the alternative, not desktop, but the alternative that was there before on mobile, which was send the link to my PC and I'll complete it on my PC. The 30-minute do it there and then process had a higher conversion rate than they send it to my PC, I'll do it later, which was a surprise to me, because I personally thought, wow, I'm not sure if I would do that. And thinking about it, I've written blog posts on my phone, so I probably would have done it, but I'm not your typical user, so I'm a bit of a gadget freak, so 1,000 people is a better example. So, and the data, I can't remember if that was from Mobile or Jive, it was from one of them, but they both provided the same numbers. The data was exactly the same. They were seeing exactly the same conversion and better than sending it to the desktop. So whilst I'm not here saying that's the right way to do it, because I'm not trying to make that decision, it is interesting that people will do it. They will do exactly the same long-winded, exactly the same answers and questions, large set of filter questions. They will complete that on their phone. Then companies that have tried that have had higher success rate than trying to direct them away from their phone. So I thought that was quite interesting.
I think, in my opinion, one of the fundamental differences against desktop is it's like if you see 20 years ago where people were discovering jobs, there were a lot of discoverment of jobs in commuting. You had the newspapers while you were commuting, and you were watching all the job openings and all this stuff. Then the desktop and all the job boards and career sites came, and that activity that was done in commuting was done when you were arriving to your place, to your home, and you were taking your leisure time to look for jobs, to discover jobs. And I think that's a fundamental. So I think somehow the mobile is going to be back to the past. It's going to be and somehow returning to what we were doing 20 years ago. And I'm not sure if you have seen some stats in your mobile carrier site of when is the people applying or connected right now, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot in commuting time, while in desktop it was not like that. They were taken off. So in terms of promoting, from the company point of view, promoting their jobs, I think that the people's going to be discovering much more and using that commuting to be more connected and discovering more. So I think this
Well,
is
look
how
at that. Let's see if we can look at the time.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Interesting question.
That makes sense.
And that would probably vary too with the commuting culture in different countries. Because in the U.S., of course, everybody's commuting in their cars. In other countries, everybody commutes on rail or on buses. So that'd be interesting on a country by
So
country.
by that,
Let's hope they're not on their phone.
And hopefully, yes. Hopefully, we're not doing that on the
But
phone.
by that, actually, kind of mobile enabling the underground, it'll be interesting to
Oh,
see
yeah.
if we can get that.
Be very
stats
Well,
out
now,
there.
here's my other question. As you start looking at this, are you finding that the people you're getting better yields on mobile? Is that from people in specific disciplines? Like, if I started slicing that down by, say, finance, HR, marketing jobs, IT jobs, etc., are there certain disciplines that tend to come in via mobile more so than other disciplines?
From talking to different companies, there are certain areas that definitely do better on mobile, but overall the applications and candidates are completely cross-discipline. There are certain areas that spike. The health sector spikes more than anything, with considerable more activity through mobile than any other industry. And if you chat with Chris over at PepsiCo, they have certain roles, driver jobs and jobs that are out on the road a lot. They spike very highly, but the overall is completely cross-sector. There just happens to be some obvious areas that peak. Healthcare wasn't obvious, but there are some big peaks. But other than that, no, it's completely. I think, Ari, you mentioned vice presidents hired and every element of your
we saw
functions.
everything across the board. I haven't looked at the data to see like percentages of discipline, and done those kind of comparisons, but across the board, all disciplines have used the app and downloaded it. We also, one thing that, I think is occurring, we know that 47% of our hires have used either one of our social platforms to help search or prepare for a job interview. We know that it's a pretty high percentage also who are using the mobile app, who are getting hired. So I really believe that people who have taken the time to use all the resources that are provided and tools that are provided, that on the different social platforms and about our jobs, how to prepare for the interview, what the process is, we're spending the time using the mobile app. Those people are spending more time on the device, are preparing better, and it's helping them get high with their interview process. I think there's a connection there.
I think it's quite interesting when you talk about the commute time and the change of time slice of when people are dipping into that job-seeking role. When sites, we've got examples and case studies of sites with considerably strong amount of content and great brand employment on their mobile site. Really well done. Lots of interesting information, lots of imageries, videos, all sorts of things to delve into. And others with very, very little, but just the jobs. At least the jobs are accessible. And where we've looked at where the one obviously doesn't get huge volumes of page views versus their desktop site, but where there's more material, we've seen double, like you have, double the amount of time and the number of pages and the volume of content viewed, where the employment branding element was very strong on the mobile phone. And that fits very well if I'm sitting on the train and I'm seeing this company and I'm interested and the material's there for me to consume. The numbers show that people consume it. They get on with it there and then if they can. Obviously, if it's not there, they're not, and the numbers are the numbers look worse on their mobile versus desktop because we're comparing apples and oranges. So it's a bit awkward.
So like two more things I'd like to focus on. One is again a question around, you raised the point about a high level of internal users on mobiles, and I just want to put that to them why. I suspect I know why, but why do we think that is? And then the second question after that is, okay, where next? Where are we going? Well, I'll start with you, but for that last one. So there's two things I want to talk about, which is, are you surprised that you're getting a higher level of internal sort of users applying via mobile or not? Anyway.
Coming from considering how internet is consumed inside corporate environments and considering the volume of businesses where the internet, web access can be frequently heavily restricted, but there's a free Wi-Fi for me to do whatever I want on my mobile, no. Because
corporate naivety is driving
corporate culture is driving it, corporate IT almost. The policies that are in place to protect the business and their employees have made it very easy for me to feel comfortable browsing anything on my mobile. And the other thing is it's private. It's very one-to-one. If I'm sitting at my desk and if in corporate environment and I'm considering going, I see a job opening, do I want everybody around me to know I'm thinking of making that change or trying to progress? Or it may not be the sort of thing I want to broadcast while I'm thinking about it and researching. Where on my phone it's pretty private. It's one-to-one, and it's that one-to-one that makes the mobile so very interesting for recruitment in the future.
So that's what I was saying. So if you're thinking about if referrals are a good source, and we know that a lot more companies are saying I get a much higher conversion rates from internal referrals.
Always.
Then actually mobile, and it's another one that says mobile should be a fundamental part of your strategy because we're seeing a much higher. It enables your audience to do things that they're not doing at this point in time.
I mean, the way our mobile app is set up is there's 3 different portals. So, and 3 different candidate experiences. So for an internal candidate who we already know, the apply process is simple. We know them. We don't have to ask them questions that you would ask an external. So to use the mobile device and the app for an internal is very, very easy. While they have it, they can easily engage, you know, through Facebook or whatever with the recruiter, whatever they're applying to. Very simple, like literally a few minutes. And they can also do their employee referral right there. So, you know, I come to a conference like this and I meet people and may want to do right here, do any referrals versus wait till I get to a desktop and forget to do it, you know. So I think all of that makes it easy. They also get the alerts on jobs that they're interested in. They come to them, they get the alert, oh good, it's here, and they just apply when they get the alert. So it's a great tool. It's simple and it's great for our internals.
Fantastic. Right, where next? Where do I start with you or do I finish with you? I'm not quite sure. But where is it going? Because I'm thinking from a C-level executive. At the moment they were told the web's the next big thing, and now they're told social media's the next big thing, and now we're telling them mobile's the next big thing, and all they're seeing is a pain going out. I'm just giving all this money away.
I think there's going to be over time a slight change in overall in approach as social continues to gain momentum, and we continuously hear about more of a conversation with our candidate, and the battle for talent becomes more and more tough as economy changes. I think we'll see, without any doubt, more targeted content and solutions become affordable for companies to do that. I think we'll see many more, I don't like the phrase, but it's easy to communicate, more microsites, say, that allow me, when I see a job advert, to go through and see a site that's all about sales, the sales area of that company, rather than the overall view of the company, a space that talks closer to me. And Sodexo have some really brilliant targeted microsites that talk specifically to that particular type of candidate and that particular element, that particular function typically. So I think we're going to see more of that, much more, as time goes on, because mainly because the social becomes much more one-to-one. And as we see more and more mobile use, and we see much more that demand for one-to-one, just like in the retail world where we've seen lots of landing pages and lots of more sophisticated approaches to convert customers to sales in that space, we'll see the same happen here. It's just currently that's not very affordable, it's too difficult, takes too much effort, and we've got to, you know, we have to grow up, you know, work our way to there. We can't just suddenly arrive. There's a journey,
but the sun
and we're on that journey. And some have arrived already, which is fantastic.
Okay, where next?
I think that I'm absolutely with your point. Is about personalization of the content for every single user. I think that's the future, and I think that the thread is going to be on how to integrate all these tools from the technology point of view. It's like how we're going to be integrating the old ATS that we have with the mobile to personalize in an easy way, you know, because if it's not easy, it's not going to be used by the corporates, you know. So I think we'll have a big challenge in there to make it all work together. And it's not going to be an easy thing, because sometimes the technology guys who are running the careers part of the company are running the whole website, and when you're asking them to personalize or to integrate one part with a new mobile device, they're going to put you the last thing that they on their pipeline. So I think that's going to be the big challenge on this. You know, it's like at the end, make it easy for the companies.
Any thoughts on the next?
I think that the personalization of content is, you know, that's the direction that we're going in. I think within companies like, you know, large companies, there's also going to be a move toward specific approaches and customized approaches for these different, and how we go through the process. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. We have types of jobs that are, we get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applicants. The process is going to be very different. You know, we'll set up screening processes early on, you know, to make with those types of positions. You have those very elite type of jobs that are, you know, you go after specific people. The process has to be different, you know, more simplified and direct, and to get them right in the door. So it's not going to be like it is today across the board the same.
So we've got personalization, we've got integration, we've got revisiting or re-architecting or re-engineering the process.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Well, I agree with your point. I think we're looking, number one, at one size fits one, not all, and we can't attempt anything other than that. I think as we continue to see development done, we're going to find that more and more companies are able to afford to build well-integrated mobile sites. And that's what your research is showing, is that this is curving up. And I promise you, the only reason that that's driving into the lower end of the Fortune Global 500 is because it's becoming more affordable. The other piece we're going to start seeing is as work and the workplace are shifting, we're going to go from focus on candidate experience to the broader focus on employee experience. Because the objective of a candidate experience is leading us to an employee. And so now we're going to have to start looking at mobile sites that support our employees. Because even with Yahoo and Best Buy doing their best to kill this stuff off, remote working is not going to go away. As a matter of fact, we've got to get better at managing it. Now, there's always going to be jobs that can't do that. You've got a lot of those at Sodexo. But we're going to have to understand that in a knowledge economy, we don't have that luxury of putting a building in place and forcing everybody to show up. So the evolution that I'm seeing is going to drive us further along the way to migrating cleanly from a candidate experience to an employee experience. And that's a couple of steps further
which
down
has
the road.
huge implications, I think, for security.
It has implications for security, it has implications for branding,
Mhm.
it has implications for how we construct a relationship even. We start getting into the differences between data privacy issues from country to country. That becomes another huge issue. So that there's a lot more out there, but it's going to start to grow and to tip as the costs begin to drive down.
Okay.
I will tell you, there's, and I don't want to put a plug in, but I'm going to, for our vendor partner that we're using all the time, Banana, they've now come out with a,
All the top banana, by the way. It's not us.
they've come out, I'm sorry.
No, it's
That's
okay.
what we use.
It's okay. Oh, we were impressed yesterday
Yeah,
when you
they,
were talking about it.
they're coming out with an onboarding app. So that is to integrate with the so that you have the mobile apply. I haven't seen it yet. I'll be taking a look at it. But you have the apply process. The next step is the onboarding. So, it's all coming. There's the learning. All of it is going to be, I
Well,
think, mobile.
and then the onboarding has to then move seamlessly into the assimilation process, and then that becomes part of learning. The next question is, how do we take this e-backpack of information that these people are bringing with them into the organization as they go on to their next organization? That becomes the next fun question for HR, is because you got people carrying around data sets, and I've been working for Sodexo, let's say, for 5 years. You got a lot of data on me, and I show up at my next company. How do I extract my data from Sodexo and take it with me? You've trained me. You've spent 5 years teaching me new skills and behaviors, but that's all sitting in your computer. I want that in my e-backpack to take to my next employer. That's your next question.
One piece of advice. So if I'm one of the, whatever it is, 83% of companies who haven't got a mobile-enabled website, and I've heard this and I go, okay, I get it. It's at a point, we're at that tipping point, so I've got to do something. I recognise where kind of some of the issues or the future's going. So what's your one piece of advice, or one piece of advice you would give to a company who's thinking about that? Well, again, I'll start from there and go around again.
One piece.
Yeah, just one.
Don't make the same mistake most companies made with social. Make sure it's bound to your overall strategy. It's not something separate over here in a little box. It's got to be part of your complete recruitment strategy.
I will say, try to make it simple, as simple as you can. Do not do like a huge project of 2 years. Do something simple that you know that it's going to work, and then after that you will be moving after that.
I agree. Keep it simple. I think a first step is just optimize the career site. You don't have that. That's the foundation of everything. Do that, and then start. From there, then you can start looking at all everything else that you want to do. But the career site has to be optimized, because whether or not you have any strategy or not, you're having traffic. You're having mobile traffic come to it. whether you want it or not, it's coming. So you don't want to lose that traffic.
I'm going to give you two. One, it's got to be well and thoughtfully integrated into your other systems.
Mhm.
It can't just be a terminating event. Number two, we've got to remember and focus in on candidate experience and what does that mean for your brand as an employer. Because again, I think of Sodexo as a brand in terms of food service management and a lot of other things, but then there's also the employment brand. Google has two brands, the same thing. They have an employment brand and they have a search engine brand. What is your mobile site going to do with that? How does it help you or how does it hurt you?
Okay.
Okay.
I think we know.
Thank you for your contributions. Really interesting debate around mobile technology. I think we're going to go offline now for a couple of minutes and we'll come back with the points from this session. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well done, right?
Oh, no,
I want to cut for you.
I didn't realize it.
There you are.